Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. I'm always curious about the journey a scientific discovery takes, from like the initial aha moment to actually becoming a treatment that helps people.
Oh, absolutely. It's quite the process. Imagine it's like taking a single ingredient and transforming it into like a gourmet recipe, right?
Yeah.
So much goes into making it not only effective, but safe and, well, maybe not delicious, but you know what I mean.
Right, right. Not delicious, but definitely vital. And that's what we're digging into today.
Okay, so tell me, what are we diving into today?
Well, we're taking a deep dive into an article called Robust CMC Process for Small Molecules.
Robust CMC process. Okay, lay it on me. What's that all about?
So I got to admit, the title sounds a tad intimidating,
Right.
but I think it's all about understanding what goes on behind the scenes to make those scientific discoveries into actual treatments.
Absolutely. And I think what's so fascinating is that it takes us beyond the scientific jargon and lets us appreciate that journey of turning an idea into something that can truly help people.
Exactly. Because, it's one thing to have a breakthrough in a lab, right? But getting that breakthrough into the hands of people who need it and in a way that is safe and effective, well, that's a whole other challenge.
It is indeed, and that's precisely where CMC comes in. It stands for chemistry, manufacturing, and controls. It's like this, think of it as like the ultimate quality control system for drug development. It's the unsung hero making sure things are done right.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So CMC is all about the rigorous testing and refining that makes sure a drug is both effective, does what it's supposed to, but also safe for people to actually use.
Exactly. And here's the thing, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. The approach can be totally different depending on the type of drug being developed. Like, you wouldn't build a skyscraper the same way you'd build a birdhouse, right?
Okay, that makes sense. So you're saying there are different approaches, different blueprints, you could say, for different types of medicines.
Exactly. And that brings us to the different categories of drugs.
Yeah, the article mentioned a few, right? Like small molecules, biologics, and dosage forms.
You got it. Those are the big ones. And understanding these different categories can be really helpful when you're trying to understand a medication, Like, is it a simple structure or more like a complex machine?
Okay, so small molecules, biologics, it's kind of like we're talking about different construction projects for different types of medicines.
You're getting it. Now, let's start with those small molecules. Think of them like, those trusty Lego blocks. They're simpler structures, often created in a lab, and incredibly versatile. Like, take imatinib, for example. It's a small molecule used to treat certain types of leukemia.
Small but mighty. And I remember hearing a lot about remdesivir in the news that was used to treat COVID-19, wasn't it? That's a small molecule too, right?
You got it. Both imatinib and remdesivir are great examples of how even these small molecules can have a huge impact. Now, on the other side, we've got biologics, which are a whole different ballgame. These are way more complex because they're often derived from living cells, you see.
Oh, wow. So if small molecules are like Legos, what's a good analogy for biologics?
Let me see. I'd say biologics are more like intricate pieces of machinery, like picture a sophisticated robot designed for a very specific task.
Okay, so we're talking next level complexity here. And you mentioned a good example earlier, Humira, right? It's used to treat like a whole bunch of autoimmune conditions.
You got it. Humira is a great example of a biologic. And of course, there's insulin, which many people rely on. It used to be extracted from animals, but now, thanks to some amazing advances, we can produce it on a much larger scale using what's called recombinant DNA technology.
Okay, now hold on a sec. Recombinant DNA technology. That sounds pretty intense. Can you break that down a bit?
Sure. It's actually pretty cool when you think about it. Basically, it's like taking the instructions for making human insulin and, get this, inserting those instructions into bacteria. And then those bacteria become like these tiny little factories producing large quantities of insulin that are safe for us.
Wow, that is really incredible. So we've gone from like extracting insulin from animals to basically what? Programming bacteria to make it for us. That's mind-blowing.
It really is. And it's a perfect example of how advancements in biotechnology have completely revolutionized drug development, making treatments more accessible and often more affordable.
So we've got these different categories, like building a house versus like a tiny little model. But no matter what kind of amazing science goes into it, it's got to actually become something that's safe and effective, right? Like for you, the listener, to take.
Right, exactly. We want to make sure that it actually works and that it's safe to use, and that's where this whole CMC thing comes in.
CMC, yeah, like the unsung hero we were talking about, making
Yeah.
sure that every single drug, every single medicine that's out there
Yeah.
meets these super high standards?
Yeah, think of CMC as like that, that invisible shield, making sure that everything is up to code from start to finish.
Okay, so like a guardian of quality, making sure everything's good.
Exactly. And they actually break it down into like four key elements, right? You've got proactive quality planning, risk management, then process validation, and then, of course, continuous improvement.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there.
Okay.
So let's break it down. Let's start with proactive quality planning. What's that all about?
Okay, so imagine, right, you're building a house. You wouldn't just like start laying bricks without a plan, would you?
No, not unless you want a disaster on your hands.
Exactly. That's what proactive quality planning is like. It's that blueprint. Every little thing, every detail is planned out right from the start, from the foundation all the way up to the roof.
So it's like anticipating problems before they even have a chance to show up.
Yeah, like you're trying to design them out of the process. And
Yeah.
that's where this whole quality by design or QBD thing comes in. It's about understanding how every single part, every single step impacts that final product, that drug that you're going to take.
So it's about understanding the science inside and out.
Yeah, like if you're baking, you got to know how much flour, how much sugar to use, your oven temperature. It's like that, but for medicine.
Okay, that makes sense. So that's proactive quality planning. Now, what about risk management? What kind of risks are we talking about here?
Well, think about it like planning a road trip, right? You always got to be ready for detours, for unexpected traffic.
Right, you got to have a backup plan. What would those roadblocks be for drug development?
Well, it could be anything really, right? Like unexpected side effects or maybe even problems when you're trying to make a larger batch of the drug. Like, let's say a drug is looking really promising in these early trials. Then when you try to make more of it, suddenly there's this new impurity. Risk management means you've got to have a plan to deal with those kinds of surprises.
Okay, so it's all about having a plan B or C or even D, just in case things go off script.
Exactly. You got to be ready for anything. And then you've got process validation, which is all about like making sure that every single batch of the drug is as good as the last one.
Right, so consistency is key here. You want to make sure that every pill, every dose is going to be effective and safe. You can't have any inconsistencies when it comes to people's health.
Absolutely. And finally, there's continuous improvement. So even when a drug has been approved and it's out there, the work doesn't just stop.
Right, so it's not like, okay, we're done, time to move on.
No way. Scientists and engineers, they're constantly looking for ways to make the process better, more efficient. Maybe they can make the drug even more effective or find a way to reduce side effects.
Okay, so it's all about that constant striving for improvement. That's really impressive. It shows that they're really dedicated to patient well-being in the long run.
Exactly. And because of all of this rigorous testing, that's how regulatory bodies like, the FDA here in the US, that's how they gain the confidence to say, okay, this drug, it's good to go. People can use it safely.
That's really reassuring to know. It's not just about, discovering some new wonder drug, but making sure it can actually be made reliably, at scale so that everyone who needs it can get it without, like, worrying about whether it's safe or if it's going to be effective.
And speaking of getting those treatments to the people who need them, let's talk about dosage forms, because I have a feeling there's a lot more to it than just pill or liquid.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Dosage forms, they play a much bigger role than people realize. It's like how that medicine gets into your system, how it's absorbed and how it actually gets to where it needs to go in your body. That can make all the difference. Okay, so tell me more about that. What do you mean? It's not just about what the drug is, it's also about how it's packaged and delivered. How does that actually work? Dosage forms. Okay, so it's not like a term we hear every day, but it sounds like there's like a surprising amount of science behind, how medication actually gets into your body. It's not just about like, here's a pill, swallow it.
You got it. It's not just about the medication itself, it's about how it's delivered. Dosage forms are like, think of them as customized delivery trucks. You wouldn't deliver something fragile like, I don't know, a vase, the same way you transport bricks, right?
You got to make sure that vase arrives in one piece.
Yeah.
So how does that translate to medication, though?
Okay, so a good example is extended release metformin. Have you heard of that one?
Yeah, I've heard of extended release medications, but I've always wondered what makes them different. But it's still like a pill, right?
Okay, imagine this. You need to drink water throughout the day, right? You could, I guess, try to chug a whole gallon at once.
Yeah, no, not a good idea. I'd be spending way too much time in the bathroom.
Exactly. It wouldn't be very practical.
Oh.
So instead, you space it out, right? That's kind of what extended release medications do. They're designed to release the medication gradually over a longer period instead of all at once. It's like having a timed sprinkler system instead of just dumping a bucket of water on your lawn.
Oh, that makes sense. So for something like metformin, that helps because it's, what, keeping your blood sugar levels stable?
Exactly. It's like instead of those levels spiking up and down, it's a much smoother ride, which is way better for managing diabetes.
That's amazing. So it's not just about getting the drug into your system, but it's about delivering it in a way that, actually makes it most effective.
Exactly. It's like finding that perfect delivery system for every single medication. And I think it just highlights how much thought and care goes into every single step of drug development.
It really is incredible when you think about it, like this whole journey from, molecule to medicine, all the science, the planning, the testing. It's all about ultimately helping people, getting those safe and effective treatments to the people who really need them.
Absolutely. And, I hope that by understanding this whole process even a little bit better, it empowers you to have more informed conversations with your doctor, with your pharmacist, and even just feel more confident about the medications you're taking.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, right?
Yeah.
A huge thanks to everyone for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Until next time, stay curious.